Hello, day 14, World FND Awareness Month, and today I want to talk about misconceptions for FND. And you've heard me speak, if you've watched any of my other videos, about one of the most common misconceptions, and that is the people with FND are faking or putting on their symptoms or are in control of their symptoms. So I didn't really want to, although that is the most common misconception, I didn't really want to talk about that again today. I wanted to talk about one that is not as common, but is kind of internalised by people with FND and is felt deeply, and that is that anyone who has FND has deep mental trauma. And that misconception comes from a very long time ago when it was believed that psychological trauma was the only cause for FND. And that was sort of promoted by Freud and continued on since that time, really, until the last couple of decades. And it's only recently becoming more understood that that's not the only cause. It can still be a cause, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And forgive me, I don't know all the science ways of describing this, so I'm going to just use my own language, and this is just my understanding of FND and how the brain malfunctions. So, I'm not a doctor, I'm not qualified, this is just my opinion. So now we've got that out of the way. My understanding of the reason why people have FND is that the brain stops functioning correctly. And when the brain does function correctly, a signal goes from area A to area B in the brain. So there's signals firing in the brain correctly. And when you have FND, those signals do not fire correctly. It's a misfire. It's a malfunction in that respect. And there are pathways that the signals take in the brain. And when you have FND, your signals are taking the incorrect pathways. Okay, and that is not because there is a structural reason that part of the brain cells are dead, or there's a tumor, or so there's some obstruction or something like that. It's just because the brain just short circuits and sends the signals in the wrong direction to the wrong part of the brain. What I wanted to talk about was how those incorrect pathways are formed, and that's where the new understanding is coming from. So incorrect pathways are formed when our bodies and minds, us as a human being, are exposed to prolonged stress or prolonged difficult situations. We might not even perceive those situations to be bad. So, for example, somebody who's training to become an Olympic athlete will have a very intense training schedule, not just physically, but the food that they eat, their mental attitude, how they respond to outside distractions and things like that, which puts them under intense stress. People in war zones will be under an intense amount of stress, people who are studying for exams. And then, yes, you do have people who are psychologically traumatized, so they may have had something happen to them that has affected them really deeply in childhood or adulthood or any time of their life. And you can be psychologically traumatized by a physical accident. So let's just talk about, say, a car accident, for example. If you have a car accident, you're physically injured. That can also traumatically injure your psyche, and you may be scared to get in a car. You may feel like your life is hanging by a thread, and your mortality is right there in the forefront of your mind. So all of those situations cause incorrect pathways to be developed in the brain. They're just not active. And then there is a trigger with FND. So when those pathways are formed, and then you come to a crossroads where those pathways are, and a trigger is pulled, then you can jump from the correct pathway to the incorrect pathway. Does that make sense? And it's if the pathways, the triggers and the timing all line up, it can trigger the start of FND. And that's why you can't undo it, because those pathways have been formed over your entire life. So it's not just psychological trauma that can cause incorrect pathways to grow in the brain or to be developed. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.